Hey guys, so welcome back to my channel. I'm drinking a not banana, strawberry and vanilla um, smoothie, protein smoothie. I put in some vanilla yogurt. I like the ratio. It's because it's high protein, but I also put some vanilla protein powder in it with some fat-free skim milk, and it's the lactose free, and I throw in a little bit of Benefiber in there because I need some fiber, and then I think that's I threw in some strawberries in there, a couple fresh strawberries, not the frozen ones, just to cut up. I think about 3 strawberries in there. I threw them in there, and then that's it. This is breakfast, guys. So I'm actually almost done with it. I'm gonna finish it up and then wait about an hour or two before I have actual lunch. But lunch will be kind of light. But so anyway, so today I want to talk to you guys. I'm not sure. This is so random, I know, but I want to talk to you guys about. Do you guys? I don't know if you guys have noticed. If you're religious and you go to church, have you noticed how there's here, like in the last, I want to say since like 2014, 2015 and on, churches, no matter what religious, denomination you go to. I grew up in the church as a Southern Baptist, and then I think I hit my teens. I was into Disciples of Christ, which is very similar to Southern Baptist. And then I was on and off in the whole Baptist thing. So, and then I think when I hit, by the time I became an adult, like, 18, 19, 20, I kind of stopped going to church altogether. But doesn't mean that I don't keep up with, the Bible and all that stuff. Okay. So, if you are religious or you're in the church or you have gone to church or whatever, regardless of your denomination, have y'all noticed here lately, and like I said, in the last 10 years or so, um, you notice that churches in the pulpit, the actual preacher and so forth, the preachers have been more political than they have been ever. Um, I don't know if it's just me, but I've noticed this, especially in a lot of the mega churches. Now, don't I have a whole nother ideas about mega churches. Don't get me started on that. But I do have to say on HBO, The Gemstones, that is a hilarious show about the whole mega church thing. So if you are bored, watch it. It is hilarious. It's kind of explicit, but it's funny. It's adult funny. Okay, this is actually still pretty thick. Anyway, so okay, now my issue. I don't mind. I mean, to me, I think honestly, politics should not take a place in the church. Now, it's always taken a place in the church because the King James version of the Bible, literally King James, was as a politician, right? He was in it with Catholicism, and they got together with them, and they were preparing to write the Holy Bible, different versions of it. And I'm not going to go too deep in this because this is a huge rabbit hole, and I'm sure there's tons of YouTube videos out there and historians out there. And if I really wanted to sit down and actually prepare an actual video about this, I could, but I'm not going to. But hindsight is, we know the King James version of the Bible is literally written by King James. Now, not saying he sat there and wrote the Bible, but what he did was he picked out what he wanted put into the Bible. So I don't believe the Holy Bible is full, whole, package. I believe it's been a lot of pieces, and I do believe that there are some other books that are written that were taken away from it, like the Book of Enoch, and which I have not. I've downloaded it in Audible, but I have not listened to it yet. But there is, because it's like 20, 30 hours long. But I do have it. So one day I'll maybe get onto it. But I know there's other books as well. Okay, so King James literally said, got with the priest and so forth, and the whole of the Catholic Church as a whole, back in, I want to say like the fifth, I think it was the 15th century. I want to say, I think, or 14th or 15th, I can't remember. But anyways, he sat down with them at basically just think of a round table. They got down, they sat down, and they had all the books out there, the whole Bible, the whole one. Okay, he literally picked out because they want to control the masses. They want to control marriage, children, uh, the sanctity of the family unit, community, all those things. Okay, but at the same time, the church is like, well, you still got to keep it godly. So what they did was they took out a lot of books out of the Bible. There was like, we're not going to include those in our book. We're going to take them away. We're going to basically put them back on the shelf. Now what's left? Now we're going to take either maybe some 10 commandments, maybe some other verses of the Bible. We're going to switch up some of the wording. We're going to, take, there's this like whole verse here in the whole Bible, but we're going to backspace half of that verse and then put a period. And we're going to omit that section, cut that section out, like editing, literally editing. And this is why I don't believe in the King James Version Bible, because it is literally the King James Version. It's not the version of the Bible. And what makes me mad is if you notice, a lot of preachers will utilize the King James Version. And no matter which denomination they use the King James Version. And the reason King James Version sometimes is very complicated to understand is because they use a lot of these and thous. Well, back in the 1500s, that's how they talked. They say thy and thee, be nost, and all this, the words like that. They use that. Now, the standard version of the Bible was more of everyday language almost. It was more of, instead of taking the these and thous or whatever, they say, you must do whatever, or, this must happen. You know what I mean? They take whatever the word thou means, they replaced it with the actual word that we would understand. And that's the standard version. Now, it's still the same version of the King James because they still utilize this same, they take that same verse and all they do is change the thee and thou to an actual word that makes sense to us. My problem is though, it's still not the whole Bible. And no, so it's still political. So the whole thing, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, preachers, even today, are even more so, you notice a lot of them are very pro-Trump. Now, I'm not trying to say pro-Trump, no Trump, whatever it is a big, a bad thing, good thing, or whatever. Because that's between you and your conscience, But what I am saying is that you do need to get to a point where when you're in church, I believe church should be, yes, it's about fellowship with other Christians and like-minded people. And you're supposed to be there to, one, be within yourself and your wholeness between you and your God, right? Not your preacher, not other people. You're not there to gossip about who's dating who in the church and who's sitting by who's wearing this, who's wearing that, and who's, who did you see this past week? And look at they show up with so-and-so. I cannot stand that. That's another reason what stopped me from going to church. Because, and in the Bible it also says, well, two or more gather, so shall I be. Well, I believe that if that's true, that means if I'm by myself and I'm trying to worship God by myself, does that mean God's not here? Because if it says in the Bible, two or more gather, I shall be there also. Well, then I have to have somebody else here. So another person together. They would consider that being a church. And it's not really a building. And that's where the mega church come into play. They have their building is their church. You know what I mean? That's their God is their building. But I think it's crazy is that this is where me and the Bible kind of conflict. I'm not going to get into Jesus and all that stuff. But what I am going to say is that I don't agree with politics and the church being together, but they've been together for centuries. And I think I've noticed a lot of people, like, especially because I'm big on Facebook still, I guess because I'm old still. So I'm old, okay? So don't hate me on that one. But there's a lot of people I've noticed, especially some of my friends of mine, have noticed that they've stopped kind of going to church. Like they're really discouraged going to an actual building with other people to congregate because the preachers and the church as a whole, they seem to be really political. They're using the podium as a campaign for a president that they want the congregation to vote for. I Yes, yes, I do. Do I believe this nation was found under God or whatever it is? Okay, according to, I guess, the Pledge of Allegiance and all that, I understand that. Even though it wasn't added till after a war, I think it was in the 40s, after a war, or 50s, don't count, don't, I'm bad with dates, so don't, I know it was after a certain war that the word under God was not added until then. So it's not actually a real Pledge Allegiance, which is funny because it really wasn't added. If you watch, I want to say the Bells of St. Mary's. If you watch that, it has Bing Crosby in it, who plays a priest in it. I don't know why it's counted as a Christmas movie, but it plays more at Christmas time. If you watch it, it's a black and white movie. It's a really good movie. It's about a Catholic school. You know, there's kids in it, and they go through the school year or whatever it is. But he's also there's a friendship between him and a nun who's young, and she gets sick and all this stuff, whatever it is. But if you watch it, there's a part. It's a very small part, kind of at the beginning a little bit, where the children are in the classroom and they have to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. You notice that they I don't believe I don't think, don't quote me this, I don't think they put their hand on their heart. I don't think they do. I think they just stand, if I'm not mistaken. And then they don't say the word under God. At first, I thought, when I was watching it, I thought it was the network that the movie was shown on. They just took that part, like edited. But actually, I actually bought the DVD and I actually watched it, and it literally wasn't in there. And then I looked at the date of when this movie was made, and our time, or what time it was supposed to take place in, was obviously in the 1940s and 50s, because color wasn't a thing, and so the whole thing's written in black and white. And Bing Crosby is really, really young, so it was before White Christmas and all that movie and all the other movies he done came out. So he was doing that one, and so it under God didn't come into play until after that. So when you put under God in our Pledge of Allegiance now, and of course generations afterwards, we've learned it as that, it's adding, religion into with the politics, because our allegiance is political, and but you put under God, and you put in God we trust on a dollar bill, you put the word God in there, you're combining church and state. But yet they always sit there and say, oh, let's separate church and state. Church and state should be separate. And now, recently in the last couple of years, you've noticed that there's been voting in certain, especially southern states, have allowed the 10 Commandments to be on government property in the schools. Prayer and things like that, Bibles, classes are now forced and implemented into it. It's like we're not saying going backwards, but it's almost like we're going back to King James, where the government is controlling, is working with the church sectors, and the church sectors are working with the government to convince, to persuade, to, I don't want to say brainwash, but to manipulate us into one narrow mind thinking. And we're getting closer to basically almost 1984 by George Orwell. We're getting so close to that. Everybody thought that's more about technology and about, like TikTok and Facebook and all that stuff. It's not necessarily that. It's really about the church and state. And once you gather the church and state and you put those two together, and they intertwine, they braid together, you're not going to have, you're not going to have, there's nothing else to braid. Those two things are already big topics already on their own, separately. And when you put them together and you force it together and intertwine that in everybody's lives, pretty soon it's not just going to be at schools and in churches and things like that. It's going to be implemented into your workplace. It's going to be implemented into your daily life. Even if you don't work, you're going to be required every day, certain times. It's almost like you're going to be required to, did you, check in. They're going to be like, oh, did you read your Bible today? And they're going to be Bibles that are literally, I'm waiting for another standard, a new version of the Bible written. We're due for it, because it's now getting to the point where, because people are saying that, well, you bring up like homosexuality. Okay, people say that it's wrong. It says in the Bible it's a sin and so forth. Well, so is divorce, so is murder, so is gossiping, so is gluttony, which is eating too much. So everything you do from the moment you get up and breathe, you have already sinned. I mean, yes, the difference is that once you've committed that sin, you realize you committed that sin, is to, yes, you want to repent, which is apologize, tell God, hey, I'm so sorry. I did something wrong, and please help me and guide me to help me not do it again. And you try your best not to do it again. But do we redo that? That's the thing. And they say true Christians, that's what they do. They truly do. They repent and they try their hardest not to do it again. But how do you try your hardest not to do things like gluttony? Okay, it's eating. Okay, so when you go eat, you're not supposed to eat to the point that you feel full, because then at that point you've eaten too much. If you are overweight, and I mean in the Bible, who's to say who's overweight? I mean, the Bible doesn't give us an actual standard measurement, which is kind of crazy. I mean, but doctors and healthcare is also backed up by the church, and it's also backed up by the government. So you have your healthcare is going to say, well, are you're overweight according to our charts, our measurements. So therefore you are, every day and every second you're alive, or every time you eat, you've committed a sin. It's like you never get over it. You know what I'm saying? It's like just living life is a sin. It's crazy, right? But anyways, I'm going to leave it here because, guys, I can keep going and going. I mean, what do you guys think about the church and politics and things like that? I'm just curious. I don't want to start an argument, but I'm just curious on what your guys' thoughts on this. Because have you noticed the shift in the church as a whole and about politics and things like that? Have you noticed they've used it as a campaign and not as an actual, for God and for you as a community? They do it as a campaign for their favorite politician. Is the government paying the churches under the table and giving them incentives to promote? And have you stopped going to church? Or were you going to a church building? Have you stopped? And how do you feel about the Bible verse that says, oh, well, two gather, so shall I be, but yet there's only one. If I'm only here by myself, that means God's not here? I mean, can you explain that further for me? And help me out, guys. I mean, put down the Bible verses if you can, and let me know. I guess that's it. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff, and hit the notification bell, because you never know when I'll put a video out. Never know what I'm going to talk about. I just talk about whatever's on my mind at the time, and I will see you guys next time. I hope you guys have a great day, rest of the week, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!